Let's not talk about the Bermuda Triangle. Because there is also Michigan, diabolical Japanese, and in general there are a lot of places where either you can't get to at all, or it's better not to. There was a Howard Phillips Lovecraft writer. And in 1928 he wrote the legendary story The Call of Cthulhu. About a terrible monster that lives at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean among the ruins of a sunken city called R'lyeh. And, characteristically, not just somewhere out there in the Pacific Ocean, the author indicated specific coordinates 47 degrees 9 minutes south latitude and 126 degrees 43 minutes west longitude. Now fast forward to 1992. Then Croatian engineer and researcher Hrvoje Ukatila decided to identify the most remote and inaccessible point of the globe for people. It turned out 48 degrees 52 minutes south latitude and 123 degrees 23 minutes west longitude. Pretty close to Cthulhu's lair. However, the engineer turned out to be a fan of another writer, Jules Verne, and decided to name this place in honor of Captain Nemo, because that's where the unsociable captain of the Nautilus would prefer to live. But Lovecraft still recalled himself in 1997. Scientists heard a strange sound from under the water in the area of Nemo Point. They must have felt uneasy. Then, of course, they said that a huge ice floe broke off somewhere and collapsed. An octopus is sitting there, a dead city or a giant submarine is resting, it is unknown. But we can definitely say that there is a whole city of cosmic ruins there. This place has long been used as the safest place for flooding spent satellites, ships, and so on. For example, there are the remains of the Soviet Mir station, 6 Salyut stations, a SpaceX rocket, 5 space trucks, including the ship Jules Verne. What about Cthulhu? In the early 1950s, the crew of a submarine of the Northern Fleet spotted strange sounds in the Norwegian Sea. The commander even suggested that the submarine was surrounded by some creatures. From the story of the submarine commander, it was clear that the creatures were actively maneuvering around vertically and horizontally. Their sounds were unknown to us, and we could not classify them. There was a Cold War, so the Soviet military decided that the enemy had deployed a ship direction finding system. The USSR Navy launched a program to counteract this system and called it Quaker because the sounds were croaking. We'd been racking our brains for 30 years, but we still didn't understand what those sounds were. The program was simply closed. Meanwhile, the Americans themselves listened in puzzlement. Already in the Pacific Ocean, oceanographer Christopher Fox even classified croaking he called a more melodic variation Julia, tapping train, a sudden sharp sound whistle. According to the main version, everyone was scared of striped whales, relatives of humpbacks. However, the controversy continues. And here is also a cemetery, only not spaceships, but sea cruisers, destroyers, tankers, and also planes, tanks, and thousands of sailors and soldiers. There was a Japanese military base there during World War II. In 1944, the Americans destroyed it during Operation Hillston, so everything has been lying there ever since, covered with coral. Curious divers often swim there, but the locals strongly advise them not to do this. Every year scuba divers disappear, so much so that bodies are not always found. In this case, of course, it is quite difficult to talk about the location, because the islands are no. That is, the famous navigator James Cook put it on the map in the 18th century. It is mentioned in the documents of 1908, and even on Google Maps it was until 2012, but the participants of the expeditions of recent years did not find it. Moreover, in the designated place, the depth of the ocean was at least 1,300 meters. There are no dolphins or whales there. At least, no one saw it. And somewhere there should be at least 4 ships and 3 fighters. Unless, of course, they fell into some other dimension and so on. The story is very Bermuda. First, in 1953, 3 ships disappear without a trace at once, without even having time to transmit an SOS signal. Then the research expedition Kale Marub 5 is sent to the same place, and it suffers the same fate. And in 1979, 3 American supersonic military aircraft disappeared. Legend has it that at first 2 disappeared somewhere, and when the third flew to look, the pilot reported a kind of spherical red glow, then screamed, and that was it. In general, a logical explanation is quite possible. The place is volcanically active, eruptions generate powerful typhoons. In addition, gases rise from the bottom. According to scientists, they create strange flashes of light. Since we are walking around Bermuda, let's carefully sail away from them to the sea, which has no shores, because it ends far from any land. The fact is that this sea rotates like a funnel. It is warmer here than in the rest of the ocean, and the water surface is slightly higher than the general sea level. There are brown algae, sargassum, and all kinds of garbage floating around in a circle, because when it gets here, it doesn't float away anywhere, and it spins endlessly. Australian scientist Richard Sylvester said that the air above him is also spinning. The whirlpool creates small cyclones into which the plane may well be sucked. But that's one thing. But sucking in a whole crew and not touching the ship is something else. This is exactly what happened in this sea with the French merchant ship Rosalie in 1840. It was found empty. The sails are up, but no one is on board. And there were several more such cases. From the point of view of geography, lakes are not part of the world ocean, but let's add about them. After all, they are also water, and interesting things also happen. It was either in 1937, or in 1938. The ship was sailing on the lake. Captain George Donner was on duty on the bridge at the helm for several hours, then went to rest in the cabin and asked to wake him up in 3 hours. The assistant came when he was told. I knocked and there was no answer. The door was locked, I had to break it down. The cabin was empty. The ship was searched, but the captain was nowhere to be found. Nothing has been known about him since. And in 1950, a Douglas DC-4 passenger plane took off from New York to Seattle and disappeared over the lake. There were 58 people on board. Neither they nor the wreckage were ever found. In both cases, everything happened exactly on the part of the lake that was reputed to be bad. It is believed to be located between the cities of Ludington, Benton Harbor in Michigan, and Manitowoc in Wisconsin. So there is also no